General Hospital will reveal. First, this May at General Hospital was predicted to be a period of utter chaos as dark secrets and dangerous schemes gradually came to light, triggering a series of emotional storms that swept through Port Charles. Drew had long hidden behind a facade of kindness, but fate was finally about to make him pay for all that he had concealed. The trap orchestrated by Nina through her covert control of an escort network seemed poised to be the first devastating blow against Drew, however, with survival instincts honed over the years. Drew was able to deftly maneuver the situation, escaping immediate danger and successfully planting the belief in Willow's heart that he was completely innocent. Yet this peace was only temporary. For in reality, Drew was concealing a far more damning web of sins, any of which, if exposed, would bring his carefully constructed world crashing down in an instant. One of Drew's gravest offenses was bribing staff members at the clinic where Michael was receiving treatment, coercing them into fabricating a story that Michael did not wish to see Willow. This cruel deception led Willow to leave in heartbreak, believing that the man she loved most had abandoned her. And that was merely the beginning. Cloaked under another layer of betrayal was Drew's murky past with Nina, his former lover, poised to resurrect itself and incinerate everything he had tried to build with Willow. A horrific truth was about to surface. Drew had not only been intimately involved with Nina, but he had done so at the very time he professed undying love to Willow, the fragile daughter of the very woman he had so deeply betrayed. Exhausted after endless days trapped in lies and pain, Willow would soon begin sensing the falseness in every sweet gesture Drew fabricated. Every promise, every tender look he cast her way, carried the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. While Drew desperately tried to cling to the remnants of their rotting relationship, time relentlessly pushed him closer to the day of his reckoning. Under mounting pressure, his actions grew increasingly reckless, unwittingly hastening his own downfall. In a desperate attempt to salvage his image, Drew sought out Liesel, infamous for her crisis management and ability to bury secrets. He proposed a dangerous bargain, offering to sacrifice his business interests in exchange for her protection. Yet Liesel, seasoned in cunning, quickly realized that Drew was merely a juicy prey serving himself up to the wolves. Rather than help, Liesel quietly recorded all of Drew's crimes, preparing to weaponize them to further her own ambitions. When the truth finally reached Willow, Port Charles was suffocating under a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. Her anger and heartbreak erupted into a fearsome rage. Willow felt like a puppet, dragged through one tragedy after another by those she had once trusted completely. She loathed Drew not only for his betrayal but also herself, for being so naive, so foolish to place her trust so easily. Drew's collapse was not marked by a single devastating blow, but rather by a relentless cascade of punishments. He was ousted from his executive role after his bribery scandal was exposed, abandoned by friends, despised by the public, and, worst of all, repudiated by Willow, the very person he had sworn to protect with his life. As Drew desperately clung to the tattered remnants of his past, Willow stood tall, declaring a total and final severance before the entire town, making it clear she would never allow herself to be hurt again. Isolated and drowning in disgrace, Drew spiraled into deep despair. He spent his final days of freedom wandering aimlessly through Port Charles, searching in vain for some miracle to erase the enormity of his sins. But fate offered him no escape. A federal investigation was launched, armed with overwhelming evidence against him. Drew's court date was set, and none of those he had once called friends came to stand by him. In his last moments of freedom, Drew understood, he had destroyed everything himself, and every lie, every betrayal he had committed had blossomed into the very ruin that now consumed him. On the day Drew was led to trial, a torrential rain battered Port Charles, as if washing away the filth left behind by the storm of betrayal. Willow stood outside the courthouse, watching coldly as Drew, in handcuffs, was led away, feeling not a shred of regret or pity. To her, Drew had long been dead. He had died the moment he chose greed and lust over truth and loyalty. And with that rain, Port Charles seemed to be cleansed, ready to turn the page to a new chapter where traitors like Drew could no longer find a place to belong. Second. While the events surrounding Drew were stirring up Port Charles, another storyline was quietly building momentum. Involving Sonny and the relentless attempts to eliminate him permanently from the power game. After the devastating explosion at his penthouse, the entire city seemed gripped by fear and confusion. No one knew exactly who orchestrated such a brazen attack, but everyone understood it was not random. A meticulously crafted plan had been set in motion. Aiming directly at Sonny, a man who had long been an untouchable symbol in Port Charles. Suspicions quickly centered on one name, Jens. A man long known for his murky associations and insatiable ambition. Initial evidence appeared to point straight to him, a shadowy figure with both the motive and the resources to carry out such a sophisticated assassination attempt. Moreover, leaked information suggested that Jens might have also financed the nurse in Los Angeles who had nearly succeeded in ending Sonny's life in a brutal ambush not long ago. However, in the chaotic and deceiving world of Port Charles, nothing is ever as it seems. It appeared the writers of General Hospital were preparing for an even more stunning twist, where the true enemy would not be the obvious suspect, but someone long forgotten or seemingly incapable of committing such ruthless crimes. Behind closed doors, dangerous new alliances were forming. Dark secrets were being traded like precious commodities, and old enemies, once thought dormant, were stirring with renewed hunger. Sonny, with his sharp instincts, could feel the shift in the air, the averted glances, the false smiles, and the unusual silences growing thicker around him each day. He knew the walls were closing in, little by little. And that this time, he might not have many chances left to turn the tide. As Sonny worked tirelessly to fortify his forces and determine who was still loyal, a series of other subtle events unfolded. Some of his once trusted allies began to show troubling signs, a late-night phone call that went unanswered, secret meetings taking place in territory Sonny no longer controlled, and strange text messages deleted moments after being sent. Sonny recognized these patterns. They were the small but undeniable cracks that, left unchecked, would lead to a complete collapse. The private investigation Sonny quietly launched soon uncovered a horrifying truth: the mastermind behind the attacks, the one who bribed the nurse in Los Angeles, orchestrated the penthouse explosion, and leaked internal information, was none other than someone Sonny had once saved. A person who owed Sonny a profound debt but had allowed years of suppressed ambition and resentment to fester into an act of ultimate betrayal. When this name was finally exposed, it would not only stun Sonny but send shockwaves throughout all of Port Charles. No one could have imagined that someone once cloaked in loyalty could plot so viciously against the very man who had once saved their life. That revelation would tear apart alliances, destroy already fragile relationships, and usher in a bloody new era as Sonny decided to retaliate, not with mercy, but with a force and fury that Port Charles had never seen before. At the climax of this revelation, when the full truth was dragged into the light, Port Charles would cease to be a place of peace. Factions would rise. The war for power would enter a fiercer chapter. And Sonny, the man who had weathered every storm, would find himself in a battle not only to protect his own life but to preserve the very soul of the city he had sworn never to let fall into the hands of traitors. Third, while Port Charles was already in turmoil with dangerous schemes and hidden threats, elsewhere in the city, Jocelyn was channeling all her energy into what seemed like a much simpler goal: securing a research assistant position in a prestigious academic program. However, her days of hard work and tireless effort quickly collided with a dark reality she had never anticipated. Professor Henry Dalton, who initially appeared to be the model of professionalism and dedication, soon revealed himself to be a far more dangerous figure lurking behind a polished exterior. From their very first meetings, Jocelyn noticed the unusual attention Dalton paid to Emma. His interest in her clearly surpassed the bounds of a simple mentor-student relationship, stirring a deep sense of unease within Jocelyn. With instincts sharpened by past heartbreaks and hardships, Jocelyn quickly realized that Emma might be in serious danger, a danger Emma herself was too young and naive to recognize. The question facing Jocelyn now was not merely how to excel in her research role, but how to protect Emma from a tightening snare without putting both of them in greater peril. Yet, as Jocelyn attempted to shield Emma, she inadvertently made herself the new target of Dalton's twisted desires. As his attention shifted from Emma to her, the atmosphere around Jocelyn grew suffocating and perilous. Alone and battling in silence, Jocelyn was forced to make excruciating choices. Either risk losing the career opportunity she had fought so hard for or find a way to expose Dalton's true nature before it was too late. The pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders. But her innate courage and her instinct to protect the vulnerable would not allow her to turn away. Meanwhile, in another unfolding storyline, Lulu continued her relentless search for the truth about Giovanni's real family, the boy beloved by the town but shrouded in secrecy. Unwilling to accept the vague adoption story surrounding Gio, Lulu doggedly pursued every faint lead, despite warnings and resistance from those around her. Her perseverance finally paid off when she uncovered a shocking truth. Gio was not merely an adopted child, he was Brooke Lynn's biological son. When this truth began to surface, Brooke Lynn reacted with fierce denial. Trapped between guilt, fear, and old wounds, she found it nearly impossible to accept that the boy she had tried so hard to keep at arm's length was her own flesh and blood. Yet no matter how deeply buried, the instinct of a mother could not be denied. Gradually, as undeniable evidence emerged, Brooke Lynn was forced to confront the painful moment she had given up her son to protect him from threats beyond her control. The May sweep not only brought the truth about Gio to light but also led Dante, who shared deep ties to both Brooke Lynn and Lulu, to uncover another secret: Brooke Lynn was pregnant. This revelation struck Dante like a lightning bolt, as he slowly realized he had a child he had never known existed, a piece of himself living in the world, hidden from him for so long. A maelstrom of emotions overwhelmed him: shock, anguish, anger, and above all, an overwhelming desire to reclaim the lost years and be the father he had never been given the chance to be. These developments would not only forever change the lives of Brooke Lynn, Dante, Gio, and Lulu but would send ripples throughout all of Port Charles. In the coming months, the town would no longer be a place of peace but would transform into a battlefield of love, redemption, honor, and long-buried secrets finally clawing their way to the surface. Would you like me to continue and expand on how Brooke Lynn, Dante, and Gio confront this truth and what happens next? I can write a longer, detailed continuation if you'd like. Finally, amidst the growing chaos taking hold of Port Charles, the most anticipated event of the year was set to unfold. The Nurses' Ball would officially kick off on May 20th. Promising to be the centerpiece for dramatic confrontations and unforeseen shocks. The dazzling lights, the glittering gowns, and the sparkling smiles would only serve as the outer shell of a night where, beneath the glamorous surface, dark secrets threatened to erupt and long-standing grudges were poised to ignite into explosive confrontations. Lucy, whose instincts had been sharpened through countless previous upheavals, even issued a chilling prediction: this year's Nurses' Ball would not simply be a charitable gala, it would be a night many Port Charles residents would never forget. But, as was always the case in Port Charles, a night deemed unforgettable rarely ended in peace. The town's unluckiest citizens, those hiding sins or plotting in the shadows, would face the risk of having their actions exposed under the merciless spotlight of the evening. Insider leaks from General Hospital confirmed that the May sweeps would not merely bring minor surprises, but would unleash true chaos, powerful enough to permanently alter the destinies of several key characters. Events would escalate to their breaking point, long-buried secrets would claw their way into the harsh light of day, and once solid alliances would crumble in an instant. Every step taken on the red carpet, every performance on stage, would not just be part of a festive show, they would be strategic moves in a far greater power game, where every action and every word could set off an irreversible chain of consequences. Behind the scenes, secret conversations, hostile glares, and backdoor deals would unfold alongside the music and applause, creating a tense, suffocating atmosphere. Port Charles was inching closer to a fateful night, where masks would fall away, where the powerful would flaunt their dominance, and the weak would be forced to pay the price for their mistakes. And when the final spotlight dimmed, when the gowns and suits were reduced to mere afterimages on the dance floor, what would be left behind would not just be fond memories, but deep wounds. Irreplaceable losses, and the birth of a new, stormy era in Port Charles.